Welcome to Study Time, a televised home learning program produced by Rwanda Education Board.
Hello students, welcome to TV learning programs. I'm teacher Julius as usual. Today I'm going to be with the Senior 4 Economics class. We are beginning on our new unit, which is Unit 8, Elasticity. And our today's lesson, we are going to look at elasticity of demand and price elasticity of demand. So I expect you in this lesson, learners, to be able to differentiate elasticity of demand and price elasticity of demand. And then you should be in a position to calculate price elasticity of demand. Because we shall see different questions that involve different questions that require us to calculate price elasticity of demand. Then after, we shall see how we can interpret different price elasticity of demand. After calculating paid or price elasticity of demand, then how do you interpret it? But today, basically, we are going to look at elasticity of demand and price elasticity of demand, and how we can calculate price elasticity of demand. So I know all of you know what elasticity means. Something that is elastic. For example, there are materials which are elastic, like a rubber. It shows that kind of elasticity. It can stretch, it can change in size. It can stretch, it becomes long. Then when you remove the force, then it again contracts. So with elasticity, we are going to look at how things change. So now, what is elasticity when we come to economics? What is elasticity? So elasticity refers to the degree of reaction of dependent variables to changes in independent variables. We have two things now, which I want you to first understand. We have dependent variables. We have dependent variables. Then we have what we call independent variables. Independent variables. So with elasticity, we are looking at the degree of reaction, the measure of responsiveness of dependent variables to changes in independent variables. Meaning that here, with an independent variable, this one, an independent variable influences the action of a dependent variable. The dependent variables depend on independent variables. An indication that when independent variables change, dependent variables must also change, because dependent variables depend on independent variables. So now, in this concept now, if we talk about independent variables, we shall look at independent variables like the price of the commodity and income of the consumer. Income of the consumer. These two are independent variables. They influence dependent variables like quantity demanded or quantity demanded, and even the two can influence quantity supplied, So meaning that demand and supply are dependent variables, then price of the commodity and income of the consumer are independent variables. So when price changes, we expect quantity demanded also to change. When price changes, quantity supplied will also change. When the income of the consumer changes, the income of the consumer may also influence quantity demanded and quantity supplied. So these two are dependent variables, then these two are independent variables. Therefore, with elasticity, we want to see the degree of reaction, the magnitude, the measure of responsiveness of dependent variables to independent variables. If price changes maybe by 10%, we need to know by what percentage will quantity demanded change or will quantity supplied change. So we need to know that reaction, that responsiveness from the word respond. How will consumers respond by a change in price of the commodity or a change in their income? will the quantity demanded, will the amount of goods they buy increase? What about now suppliers? Will the quantity supplied increase or reduce? So we need now to know the magnitude of that, the degree of reaction, the degree of responsiveness, the measure of responsiveness of dependent variables to changes in independent variables. I know now you can distinguish these two, dependent variables, independent variables. With independent variables, they influence dependent variables. So an independent variable is a factor that has an influence on the dependent variables. So these two influences, they have got an influence on quantity demanded and quantity supplied. That's why price of the commodity, income of the consumer, they are independent variables. Then quantity demanded, quantity supplied are dependent variables because they are influenced by these. Now, from there now, we need to know elasticity of demand. Elasticity of demand. We need to know change in demand now. Because something which is elastic, I said, a rubber, it has that elasticity. It can change if you stretch it, then if you remove the force, then it can contract, it can reduce in size. So with the elasticity of demand now, we want to measure the degree of responsiveness of quantity demanded of a commodity to changes in factors affecting demand. We talked about the theory of demand, and we looked at factors which influence quantity demanded of a commodity. So, if we talk about elasticity of demand, we need to know the degree of responsiveness of quantity demanded of a commodity to changes in factors that affect the demand. An indication that when these factors change, quantity demanded will also change. But we need to know now what is the magnitude of this change, the degree of reaction now, if factors affecting demand, e.g., price, income of the consumer, because those are some of the factors that influence quantity demanded change, then we want to see what will be the change in quantity demanded. Therefore, we have two types of elasticity when it comes to economics: elasticity of demand and elasticity of supply. Elasticity of demand and elasticity of supply. Those are the two types of elasticity that we have. Types of elasticity. Types of elasticity here in economics. We look at elasticity of demand, elasticity of demand, and then we have what you call elasticity of supply. Elasticity of supply. Elasticity of supply. But now we are going to look at, to begin with, elasticity of demand. We are going to measure the degree of responsiveness of quantity demanded of a commodity to changes in factors that affect demand. To changes in factors that affect demand, of which now we shall concentrate on price elasticity of demand. We shall examine two variables: the price of the commodity and the quantity demanded of that commodity. The quantity of a commodity changing due to a change in its own price, in that commodity's price. If, for example, maybe we choose a commodity like beef, if the price of beef increases from 1,000 to 2,000, what will be the reaction when it comes to quantity demanded? Will quantity demanded rise or it will reduce? So now that takes us to price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand. So with price elasticity of demand, now you see we have introduced one factor that influences demand, which is price. Price elasticity of demand. That is one of the factors that influences quantity demanded of a commodity. This refers to the measure of degree of responsiveness of quantity demanded of a commodity to changes in its own price. Here we are looking at quantity demanded of a commodity changing because of what? It is changing because of the change in its own price. As I've said, if we take maybe, for example, we talk about beef, as I said, if its price changes from maybe 2,000, 1 kilogram, to maybe 3,000. We need now to know the degree of reaction. We need to know the magnitude by which quantity demanded of beef will also change. Will it remain constant? Will it reduce? Will it increase? So we need to know that. So how do we now calculate price elasticity of demand? Price elasticity of demand, we normally abbreviate it as paid, price elasticity of demand. Then this one is price elasticity of supply. So with price elasticity of demand, how do we calculate it? We need to know the formulas how we calculate price elasticity of demand. It is measured as a percentage change in quantity demanded to the percentage change in price. So how do we calculate now price elasticity of demand? Price elasticity of demand. Price elasticity of demand. This is what we call paid. How do we get it? So this is, you can say it is a change in quantity demanded, 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 then you divide by a change in price, a change in price of the commodity, a change in the price of the commodity, a change in the price of the commodity, a change in the price of the commodity. So in this case now, if you have to calculate price elasticity of demand, you can use this formula whereby you are paid, if we can simplify it, will be a change in quantity demanded, you divide by a change in price, then times original price over quantity. Or if you can use this formula of the percentage change, whereby paid can be the percentage change. You can first calculate the percentage change in quantity demanded of a commodity, in the quantity demanded of a commodity. Then you divide by the percentage change in price. You divide by the percentage change in price of a commodity. Percentage change in price of a commodity. Now, there is one thing that I want to mention here, which is very special, and I want you to pay attention. I know if we come to this formula of calculating price elasticity of demand, the price elasticity of demand, the coefficient of elasticity of demand is always negative. So, you should know why it is always negative. From the law of demand, when the price of the commodity changes, quantity demanded changes. We know how the law of demand states. It states that when the price of the commodity increases, quantity demanded of that commodity reduces. And when the price of the commodity increases, when the price of the commodity reduces, quantity demanded of the commodity increases. When price increases, quantity demanded goes down. And when price lowers or reduces, quantity demanded increases. So that's why we said in the theory of demand, there is an inverse relationship between price of the commodity and its quantity demanded. And because of that inverse relationship, that's why the coefficient of elasticity of demand is always negative. But now, many economists or many people like to affix a negative here in this formula, such that it cancels with the negative that you will get to get a positive answer. But even if you don't fix it there, you will calculate and you get your paid, because we know it is always negative because of the other inverse relationship between the price of the commodity and its quantity demanded, the law of demand. The higher the price, the lower the quantity demanded. The lower the price, the higher the quantity demanded. Because of that inverse relationship, the coefficient or paid is always negative. But some people put a negative here, such that it cancels with the negative that you will get to get a positive answer, and therefore allow you interpret your price rise of demand. Because after this, we shall see how to interpret. Is the demand elastic? Is it an elastic demand? Is it elastic demand? Is it perfect elastic demand? Is it unitary demand? So let us see now some of the examples how we can calculate price elasticity of demand. We are going now to see with this, why we ignore a negative in the final answer. It's because we are interested in determining the degree of reaction, the magnitude of reaction, but not the direction of reaction. We need the magnitude, the degree of reaction of quantity demanded of a commodity due to a change in its price. So that's why we ignore the negative. We have to get an answer in negative. If you don't put this, then we ignore that. It doesn't affect our interpretation. But you can fix this negative such that it always crosses with the other negative you get to get a positive answer. Let us see this question 1. Given that the price of beef increased from 2,000 to 2,500, and as a result, quantity demanded reduced from 4 kilograms to 2 kilograms. Calculate price rise of demand of that beef. Calculate price rise of demand of that beef. So how do you calculate that now? You can use this formula. You can use this formula. And remember how to calculate the change in quantity demanded. How would you calculate that? You would get the final of quantity 2 minus quantity 1. Then here you will get a change in price. You know how to do it. You will get the price 2 minus price 1. So if we can interpret our question now, our question 1, and we see how we can calculate it. We have quantity 1, which is 2, yes, we have quantity 1, which is 4 kilograms. Then we have quantity 2, which is 2 kilograms. Then we have price 1, which is 2,000 Rwandan francs. Then we have price 2, which is 2,500 Rwandan francs. Now, you can apply your formula, and then you calculate your price rise of demand. So now, our price rise of demand will be, if you use this formula, change in quantity demanded over change in price times price 1 over quantity 1. Now, in this case now, if you affix your negative here, if you want it, this one that we have. So we have to calculate change in quantity demanded, you will get quantity 2 minus quantity 1. So you will get your 2 minus 4. Then over change in price. Change in price, that is price 2 minus price 1. Price 2 minus price 1. That's when you will get a change in price. Price 2, which is 2,500 minus 2,000. Then we multiply our original price, so price 1, which is 2,000. Then we divide by our quantity 1, which is 4. Then from here, you simplify your answer. So that means you have this negative, which you will put in the formula. Then 2 minus 4, you remain with negative 2, if you want to indicate that. Then 2,500 minus 2,000, you'll get 500. Then times 2,000 over 4. So if we simplify this negative already, with this they will form a positive. So 2 out of 500 times 2,000 out of 4. Now we can simplify our answers now. we can simplify our equation. The 2 zeros, you can cancel them with this. Then, this 2 by 2, you get 1. By 2, you get 2. So you remain with 20 up, because we have 1 times 20 over 5 times 2, which is 10. So here, you remain with 2. 20 divided by 10, you get 2. So our price elasticity of demand is equal to 2. Is equal to 2. So this is how you can get your price elasticity of demand. So now you see our price elasticity of demand, this is greater than 1. So we shall see how to interpret this. We shall see how to interpret this. If you calculate and you get maybe the paid which is less than 1, which is greater than 1, which is 0, which is 1, what does that one imply? What does that one indicate? So meaning that here, the price elasticity of beef is 2. The price elasticity of beef is 2. The price increased, quantity demanded reduced. Quantity demanded reduced. You can even use this percentage change in quantity demanded over percentage change in the price of a commodity. They will give you one answer. How will you first calculate percentage change in quantity demanded? You have to first look at the change in quantity demanded. Then you divide by the original quantity demanded multiplied by 100. You get that percentage change. So the two will give you the same answer. The same answer. Then, let's see now, how do you do this question too? The price of commodity X increased from 200 kilograms to 300 kilograms as a result of 20% decrease in its price. Determine the price rate of demand. You can check now here. With a decrease in price, it has been given in percentage. It has been given in percentage. Therefore, you are required also to calculate the percentage change in quantity demanded. We have a percentage change in price. Then you must find out to compute a percentage change in quantity demanded. Then from there, you apply in this formula. You apply in this formula. So, how would you get now this is our question 2. They have given us percentage change in price, which is 20%. So what we need now is to calculate percentage change in quantity demanded. And how do you calculate that? We have quantity 1, which is equal to 200. Then we have quantity 2, 200 kilograms. Then we have quantity 2, which is 300 kilograms. How do you calculate the percentage change in quantity demanded? So you have to look at what changed, what is the change in our quantity demanded. So how will you get the change? Quantity 2 minus quantity 1, which is equal to, you will get 300 minus 200. So here our change in quantity is 100. But we need to express it in percentage. So our percentage change in quantity will be equal to this 100, which you have got, divided by the original 200. Because it is changing, quantity demanded changed from this. You have to calculate it on this. Then you multiply by 100. You multiply by 100 to put it in a percentage. And if you look at this now, so here we have 100 divided by 2, which gives you 50 what? 50%, which gives you 50%. Therefore, to get your paid will be equal to percentage change in quantity demanded, which is 50%. Then you divide by 20%. The percentage will cancel out. Then our paid, therefore, here will be equal to 5 over 2 which is the same as 2.5, which is the same as 2.5 as our price elasticity of demand. This is how we can use this percentage formula. This is how you can use our percentage formula. Before I wind up this lesson, learners, I have some questions for you. Question 3, try to put it down. I have question 3, which says I want you to work it out. Given that the price of a commodity Y reduced from 600 to 450 Rwandan francs, as a result, its quantity demanded increased. You can see here there is an inverse relationship. A reduction in price and increase in quantity demanded. That's why paid is always negative, because of that inverse relationship. But I said in the formula, you may put this negative, which will cancel the other negative, and you get a positive. Or we can ignore because you are interested in calculating the degree of reaction, the magnitude, not the direction of change, but the degree of change. So question 3, you have to calculate paid. Then I have, if you have put that down, I have question 4 and 5. You also write them down. The price of commodities had increased from 10,000 to 50,000, leading to a decrease in quantity demanded by 50%. Find paid. You have to first calculate a percentage change in price. Then question 5. Question 5, the price of a commodity remained constant at 2,500 Rwandan francs per unit, but its quantity demanded increased from 100 liters to 300 liters, determining its paid. Here, the price did not change. There was no any price change. So here, the demand is perfectly elastic. It did not change, but quantity demanded changed. So here, if we come to interpret here, you will find that your paid is infinity. Price also demand here is at infinity. Infinite elasticity, where some people call it infinite elasticity. Paid is at infinity. Price did not change, but quantity demanded here changed. Price is at infinite elasticity. So I want you to work out those 3 questions, question 3, question 4, and this question 5. Applying those formulas, then the next lesson, we shall see how to interpret these answers that we shall get. That will be under categories of price elasticity of demand. Thank you very much, dear learners, for watching this lesson. We meet next time in the next lesson. Bye-bye.